What's going on, everybody? My name is Mark, and I call the channel Mark's Music Place. I want to do another video, but this is going to be one of those quick, um, probably encouraging videos about gear. Now, gear is a very touchy, sensitive, subjective subject because reason being is because there's so many choices of it, and then there are so many opinions about certain pieces of gear. Um, and there are going to be a lot of people out there that would love to bash mouth. They love to bath, what they call bath mouth, uh, certain brands of gear. Um, and it, the the only problem with this concept of people. And before I get really deep into this, my name is Mark. I call the channel Mark's Music Place. If you are new, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You definitely want to hit the bell. It'll let you know when I post a new video. And definitely write some comments and so forth. Now, a thumbs up and all that definitely helps. So, to get down to the subject, I'm going to talk about, for example, there are always a brand of a certain company. There's always a certain brand that make a certain whatever it is. And because of the price, and because it might be considered so low price and even probably they might even call it low quality or whatever the case may be. But the problem is most of the people that have always got something to say about a certain brand name or piece of gear, most of these people are people you just don't want to listen to. Because it's their biased opinion. Especially if you go to other channels, other YouTube channels, and you might run across someone that give it the same piece of gear that one person is dogging, might give it high remarks and so forth. There are always going to be people out there that believe a certain brand name of gear is the only way to go. Or whatever. And I'll use, for example, in the guitar world, like for example, there are people gonna they're gonna bad mouth like Harley Benton's, right? Then there's gonna be people like, for example, Behringer gear. Behringer, really, it's actually pronounced Behringer. I don't know how we somehow miraculously changed the G to a J sound to call it Behringer. But then again, I guess like for German, it starts with a G. So I guess it's, with a G, the way you pronounce it like German, when it's really supposed to be pronounced German, Gitman. But they don't, and even yeah, that's a different topic. I'm getting way off topic. But going back to the Behringer gear, or Behringer, however you want to pronounce it. Even though Behringer gear, like for example, this MIDI control, I got Logic and Studio One. I think I got Studio One. I had Studio One. I'm about to pull Logic Pro back up. Well, this particular controller, MIDI controller, works absolutely great in Logic Pro and Studio One on my Mac computer here. Yeah, there's the faders just changed. Oh, they're just changing again. You probably saw the faders moving. So, here we go. Yeah, I gotta go back and switch. I gotta go to preference, mix view. I gotta go to preference, edit. Yeah. Let me see. Anyhow, file. Yeah, I'm messing with this audio interface. And anyhow, I'll come back to it in a second because I'm making a video. So, I just don't want to be very long on this subject. What I do, because there are people dogging, like, for example, the Clark technique. There are people out there that are just going to dog Clark technique, right? Now, and I saw a video. Well, anyhow, I'm just going to sum it up. I saw several videos, and I'm like, I had to make it's like this. It gets bad. Like when people were dogging Behringer gear, right? Because they're caught up on names and not results. They're caught up in names and not the end results of whatever. So I don't care. It's kind of like in the keyboard world. You know, the keyboard world, Casios are considered the laughing stock of synthesizers because they're supposed to be beginner, entry level, kiddie, whatever. But I'm like this. If you heard an amazing recorded song and you're like, man, that's a nice sounding song, it never dawned on me that someone said, oh man, what board they use? Oh, they use a $200 Casio. Does it matter what a person used? If the song sounded amazing, that's all that really mattered. I was proving this point when I was making the Behringer video. Like I made a couple of videos. What you won't do for love, using Behringer gear, being funny. But I wanted people to hear how that board sound. I also did another song that I was working with a client using a Behringer gear. Everyone heard it in that video. So evidently, I had to prove a point that the Behringer gear, I had to prove a point that it isn't the gear. Yes, gear matters, yet gear doesn't matter. But there are a lot of people that are trying to compensate with gear when my main concentration when it comes to overall is the talent and the artist slash musician. 90% of what you're hearing when you're listening to any song is the talent and the musician and the artist. That's the 90% of what captures your attention. It isn't the gear. Because you can go to several different studios by 7 different engineers, whatever the case, and they can use all different gear, but if it's all done properly, it's still going to come out amazing no matter what gear in what studio. The gear is only 10% of the equation. But most people make it the equation. Now, good high quality gear, yes, it's that 10% can shine. It's like mastering. When you master a song, it's the polished sound. So now, the end of the video. If someone came to me and they were using Clark Technique or whatever gear, like I have Clark Technique, and they were using, whether they're using expensive gear or cheap gear, like if they were playing this amazing bass line on a $100 Harley Benton bass, I really don't care that it's a Harley Benton bass. All I care about is the performance. That's what I care about. I don't care about. Now, this subject becomes so controversial because there are some people who say, well, if that person's playing doing this amazing stuff on a Harley Benton, imagine if they had a $4,000 Fender or whatever. It's the same thing when you deal with either a person can sing or not. If a person can't sing, It doesn't matter if they use a $50 Radio Shack mic or a $10,000 Telefunken. They're not going to sound good. But if a person sounds amazing as a singer, it doesn't matter if it's a $50 mic or a $10,000 mic. We're trying to hear the performance. Now, the only time the gear would actually matter when you're dealing with real talent is gear can, the better the gear, can definitely make the sound better overall. But a lot of the times, it's not even noticeable to a degree when you do, unless you do an A to B comparison. But most of the time, and I'll end, like I said, I'll end the video on this. Most of the gear used to record artists in the 50s and 60s weren't as good as the gear used to record artists in the 70s and 80s. It's because the mixing console, the tape machines, the outboard gear have gotten better. But do we shine or shun down on artists recorded in the 50s and 60s or even 40s? Or the way records used to sound? No, we don't. If you go back and listen to records recorded in the 40s with live big bands and all that, they never sound as good as if you listen to a big band record today on a Neve console, and like a 96 channel Neve console recorded in maybe Air Studios in London or whatever. Yeah, but it's no different than watching a film made in the 60s and watching a film made in the 90s versus watching a film made in 2000s. You can still go back and watch a film, and the cameras used in the 60s are not as good as the cameras used in the 90s versus not as good as used in the cameras today. And that's only based on someone's subjective opinion on what they think looks good in film. You know, whether it's actual film cameras, Panavision film cameras to film the movie, or a Red Epic Dragon 6K video, digital camera, film camera, digital, you know. So in the end, it's kind of like if you go back and watch film, even TV shows, or go back in time and watch stuff, the first thing that all you really cared about is the performance. It's like watching old sitcoms like The Jeffersons from the 70s, or watching episodes of MASH from the 60s/70s, or Gomer Pyle, or shows like that. You don't criticize that's the first thing that I've never ever heard of someone sit there and say, you know what, I can't watch old episodes of the Dukes of Hazzard or Gomer Pyle or Bewitched or all these sitcom TV shows because they used outdated camera, even though those cameras were considered modern at the time. You can definitely see the difference in the quality. You can see the difference in the way the film or the TV shows look. You can definitely tell when something was filmed in the 70s versus something that's being filmed today, whether it's a movie or a TV. But you're not going to go back and sit there and not watch The Jeffersons or Bewitched because it was dated equipment then. And that's the problem. That's the problem when we get caught up into names and names of gear and everything else. People get so caught up on that, and I made proven time and time again. You can make anything work if you're good at it. The only difference between more expensive gear and cheaper price gear is the more expensive gear is usually used for people that actually do it for a living constantly, and they need durability or whatever the case may be. And even that's the case, sometimes even the lower price, cheaper gear can be durable if taken care of and handled properly. And to sum it up, yeah, there are some cases where cheap gear is just cheap. And there are some pieces of gear that, or whatever the case, that you just automatically know. It's kind of like everyone knows not to ever buy a Yugo car. It was one of the worst cars made. And there are several cars that were just horrible. That's one of those cases where you say, you know what, that's a common sense thing. Yeah, there are microphones or preamps or cables or whatever, speakers, whatever, that is just completely but 99% of the gear, especially the gear that's being bashed on YouTube or whatever, most of the time that gear is actually better than people want to give it credit. It's just that there are a ton of gear snobs on YouTube, and that's exactly what they are. Gear snobs. It's kind of like if I had a choice to go, if I'm going to choose a studio to go to, I'm actually looking at the personality. I'd rather record at Treasure Isle. This is in Berry Hills of Nashville, or Blackbird, or a recording studio, because I like the personality of the studio owners and the engineers there. Versus, there's a studio in Canada called Spectre Sound. I wouldn't need. The guy's just an arrogant prick. I just would not want to go to his recording studio. He's an arrogant prick. And just because he yells, got long hair and he yells, he thinks that's cool. And his only genre is metal music. As if that's the only music out there. But there are people that watch his channel, that subscribe to the channel, that value his opinion. And that's like anyone that follows someone on YouTube that values someone's opinion. And most of the stuff, like for that guy's, is just his opinion. It is definitely not law because he can get on a TV and yell and bash a certain brand name of gear or whatever. Whatever the case, when there are a lot of other people that have that same gear that are having excellent results. So it actually makes that him look like a moron more than anything. Even though I can't give him credit on certain valid points that he makes on certain things. He's right on certain things, like DAW, like Pro Tools. I totally agree with him on that. But there are a lot of stuff that I just look at him like, he's a moron. Well, he's an arrogant, biased, whatever. So, to sum up my video, this is basically the proof of point that you don't have to listen to people out there that are bashing certain brand. If you own Behringer gear and you're making excellent results with it, that's all that really matters. Or if you're using Clark Technique, or you're using Elise's, or whatever, whatever, and you're getting great results, that's all that matters. Or you're happy with it, that's all that really matters. Everyone else's opinion on YouTube don't, including mine. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a great one.